Hey everybody, Stacy here.
Jelani here.
We are back for episode 5. Yes, we are comfortable because we decided to record our podcast from our humble abode. First of all, yes, I didn't feel like going downstairs and doing all the setup and whatnot. Y'all said y'all wanted us to keep it real and we keeping it real. And right now, I feel like the bed is the best place to do this. And so this is where we are. So welcome. Again, this is a part of our series, The Family Dynamic, episode 5, The Presence of a Mother. And we are going to kind of talk through the similar questions that we answered in episode 4, which again, appreciate your feedback on that. We got a lot of great feedback on that in email and messages. And thank you guys so much. Thank you for viewing. For those of you that are viewing on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. If you comment, please be respectful. Not try to. Please be respectful. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. For those of you that are listening from the podcast streaming platforms, thank you so much. Thank you to those of you who rated our podcast. We appreciate it. As I mentioned before, we are going to do 10 episodes for season 1. And then we are going to come back at the turn of 2023 with season 2 and some new episodes for you. Lots of good transitions are happening, so we're going to have a lot of good content for you all. So let's get into this. The presence of a mother. The first sort of question and statement we're going to address is the positive impacts. Not even positive, I'll just say the impacts to the life of a person who had their mother present. So I guess you could say positive, right? Because I don't know.
Well, depends on your situation.
It does. You know what?
Just because you had your mother and you're like, don't mean that it was a great experience.
So I'm gonna kind of leave that open. I know that we can only speak to the positive impacts to the presence of a mother. At least I can. I don't know if you.
Oh, yeah,
I would think so because his mother did a phenomenal job raising him on her own. So I'm gonna start and I'm gonna let you kind of kick it off, especially since you were raised, by a single mother,
mm-hmm.
and you can really speak to the presence of a mother for your entire life. Whereas I kind of have a cutoff point. So I'll start with you. What are some of the impacts of having
attributes?
Yeah, not necessarily the attributes, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Definitely, my mother was a key important person in my life. She literally raised me by herself and with pretty much no input from my father. So it's pretty much me and her. But you definitely learn a lot from watching like a single parent operate and how they carry themselves. She never took time off for herself, which I really didn't like about that. But she literally gave her all to me, which I appreciate. And it definitely gave me the example of how I should raise my children and the example I want to leave for my children. And she basically taught me everything that I needed to know to survive and basically how to treat women. And it gave me like this insight into how a woman thinks, or the idea. You never know how a woman thinks. But it was really a life learning experience just watching her move about through life and how she carried herself. And it kind of like just temperamented me to like, okay, this is real life. This is how things are. Even when, you're not dealt the best hand, you make the most out of it. And that's what she did.
So for you, right, what are some of the positive impacts? Having your mother there, having her be a constant, source of strength in your life, having her be someone who, not only provided for you, but she took care of you on all facets, where it's a 2-person job, but she took on this 2-person job. How did that positively impact you growing and into who you are today?
It kept me grounded spiritually. It made me more aware of the things that a woman goes through. So I'm more conscious of making sure I pay attention to the needs that my wife needs because I seen the things that my mother went through and the lack of things that she had to work with when she was going through it.
Mm-hmm.
So it made me a little bit more aware of those type of things.
Okay. Okay, well, I can speak to the presence of a mother through some of my early childhood years up until a very pivotal point, turning 13. So my mother lived until I was 13 years old. And so her presence, thinking about it today, 30 plus years later, her presence in my life from that birth until 13 period was, you know, it was instrumental to the development of who I am today. I had no idea. I had a lot of stuff that I kind of had to sort through, habits I learned from life experiences and things like that. But my mother was what I learned from her life during that period as a young child. I learned what real strength looks like, and from the perspective of, when she couldn't handle it anymore, she was honest about that. So I learned how to be vulnerable from her. I learned how to say, and she wasn't always good at saying no, because there were some things that she should have said no to that she was just like, nah, I'm gonna do it because, I ain't
I
built.
think everybody's guilty of that.
Right. So, but I did learn from her that when you've had enough, say you've had enough. I'll even say this. I did learn how to establish some type of boundaries from her, because although she might not have, I mean, and again, that's another thing where we all had to kind of learn how to establish boundaries, but there were some boundaries that she established that I saw that I took into my adulthood. So the presence of my mother showed me how important it was to be in your, not only in your child's life, but speak into your child. My mother spoke into me as a young child. She talked very adult to me about things. She didn't water it down. She didn't sugarcoat it, because she knew that I was going to be entering into the real world one day. And she wanted to be the person to kind of show me, teach me, and talk to me, so that the world wouldn't be as much of an influence on me as they could have been without her being the initial influence. So when I became a mother, although I didn't have her to kind of guide me and nurture me through some things, I did have those memories of how she nurtured me and she guided me as a young child. And so growing, once she passed away, we'll talk about that in that next question, but once she passed away, the effects of not having a mother present was a different situation for me at a different phase of my life. So
To be honest, the most important part of your life,
mm-hmm,
really, as
mm-hmm.
far as growing
My
up
development,
standpoint.
yeah, at that point, absolutely, absolutely. So you think it's a good segue point for the next question?
That's right.
I think so too. And so, yeah, we just kind of wanted to seal off that first one, how the presence of a mother can from our perspective of positivity, can positively impact how you are, who you grow into, your outlook on life, the things you do, you say, because you develop your own ideas, and your character grows from your own personal experiences, but the influence of a mother plays a big part in shaping who you are. Now, and the same thing can be said, although, like I said, we can't speak a lot on negative experiences, but the same thing can be said for having a mother present that that has a negative influence. If she talks to you crazy, if she, just does things to kind of poke at your character. And a lot of times that painful mishandling comes from unhealed stuff within that individual. And so if that individual isn't taking the time to face their stuff, deal with it head on, really own it and say, you know what? This part of me is broken. This part of me is messed up. If they don't deal with it, they will ultimately project it. And typically it starts with the children. The kids will get the brunt of what the parent is going through. And it's probably because the parent either hasn't dealt with this stuff, or they feel like they don't have any support, or they just, it's so many different
Or
factors.
in denial that they have stuff to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's important because I think a lot of times people, especially women who are, say, like single parents, they don't understand. Some of them don't understand that they lay the foundation for how their kids are going to turn out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so it's important for us to realize and understand, how much of an influence when as parents we have on shaping those children that we're stewarding over. And they, the adults they grow into, they're growing into those individuals from the bricks you laid. So we want to get into that second part of it, the not having the presence of a mother. So I'm speaking from a place of, like I said, my mother died when I was 13, which was a very pivotal age. That's where your body starts to change. You really start to develop the ideas of who you are. You kind of go through those insecurity phases. And so for me, her death was a shock to my system because, first of all, it was sudden. So I wasn't expecting her not to be here. Um, During that time of my life, I had just turned 13. She died 4 months after my 13th birthday, which she made my 13th birthday very special. She was a baker, so she had baked me cheesecakes for my birthday, and then I had like a birthday sleepover, and it was really fun. I had a great time. And that was my last birthday with her. And so that summer after she passed and I had to go to school, start my 8th grade year, I experienced a lot of things because I was already having struggles as a young girl because of the way that I walked, the color of my skin, the complexion of my skin, actually, to be specific, even the facial features that I possessed. I have a slight overbite. I have really full lips. And those were things that at that age, I had not yet embraced. I love those attributes about me today. But as a 13-year-old, it was like, I need braces. I need my skin bleached. I don't like my, hair, because I think at the time I really wasn't fully embracing my natural hair pattern. My mother never put any chemicals or anything in my hair. She took care of my hair. So when she died, my dad was trying to learn how to do all those things, and my daddy was just not good at it. He just, my poor sweet daddy, bless his soul as he rests, he just wasn't good at it. And so I had all of these things, all the things where other young girls had their mothers, and then I had to grow up fast. I had to grow up fast. It was a lot of things I ended up doing on my own. For a short period of time, I lived alone by myself, and this was before that 18, 19-year-old age. I was alone for a little while, trying to kind of take care of things. And it was a lot. It was times where I was wishing for my mother, especially when I got to the point where, not necessarily peer pressure, but maybe the looking around you and the comparing yourself, the stuff that teenagers go through. Because you see other kids that might have more things than you have, they might be smart or whatever. And so the insecurities of who you are put you in this headspace of being, I don't know, what's the word?
Of being who you really ain't.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You want to project this, persona. And so I went through that in a major way. And I can remember times where I would be sitting there like, I really wish my mother was here. Especially when I started becoming depressed, especially when the suicide attempts, and I had several suicide attempts. And I remember just feeling like, I'm ugly. I am. I might be smart. Like, I was a really smart school student, really smart, really book smart. But it was so many things that I just did not like about myself. And I remember coming up as a child, my mother would always tell me, you're beautiful. She spoke very straight to me. But her not in my ear anymore, and the world being louder than the voice that she had planted in me, it just took a lot. And so I went through things, but by the grace of God, I didn't go through as much as I could have. Um, I didn't make, I made some bad decisions. I entertained friendships. I entertained relationships. I did things that were beneath who God had called me to be, for acceptance. And a lot of that stemmed from me feeling like I lacked. And I didn't really attribute that to not having the presence of my mother, but I realized that it played a big part.
Yeah, because there's a void right there.
A huge void, a huge void. And even though there were people that would step in and fill in, it just wasn't the same for me. And so my processing of her not being in my life really it just took me through a lot of different experiences. And so as I got older, especially when I became a mother myself, that's really when I began to grieve her, because I was just like, gosh, if she were here, she could help me, tell me what to do, this, that, and the third. But I just believe that because she was a praying woman. So I just believe that the prayers that she prayed yielded the fruit that my children were able to feed off of, gave me the information I needed to mother them. God would bring things back to my remembrance that, I had no idea, and that's how I knew that the seeds of her prayers were planted, and it helped me to see what I needed to do to help my kids. How I talk to them. Now, I'm not gonna sit on this podcast and tell y'all that I was perfect, because I wasn't. I went off on these kids, okay? Went off on these children, all right? But I did. I understood why my mother loved the way that she did, because when I had my kids, and I began to care for them. Like when we would go through personal challenges financially, all I could think about was, we got to make sure that these kids are straight. And we got to keep these, we got to make, because these kids didn't ask to come here. So, and it wasn't about, making sure they had the latest this and the latest that. It was simply about making sure they had what they needed, because they didn't ask to come here, and they could not fend for themselves. And so as a mother, that nurturing part really rose up in me, and it really helped me to see, dang, this is what that contribution, that short 13-year contribution seeded. And God helped me to understand too that, yes, my mother had passed on and went away, but I still was able to make it. I was never going to be let down. I was never going to be left out. And so, just like the presence of a father can really affect a child, male or female, gender don't matter. It really affects a child from that perspective of, because the father is the protector. The father is the first level for a girl. The father is the first love of a man that she experiences, right? For a son, he's the first example of what it means to be a source of strength, to be a source of provision, to be that source of compassion, right? So the same thing applies for the mother. The mother is the first sign of, for girls, for girls and boys, for both genders, nurturing, compassion, care, strength, you know, even provision, because a mother provides in a different way, and so there's so many things and attributes of a mother that if a child doesn't is absent of that, it really is a huge void. But by the grace of God, and for other people stepping up, and not everybody is able to be a mother, right? From the natural sense. But there are people that can proxy as a mother in the lives of children, right? You may not have given birth to that child, but you love that child, you nurture that child, you have something to pour into that child. And so, that when we say the presence of a mother, that's what we mean. If you know a child that doesn't have the physical presence of their mother, and God puts it on your heart to serve them in that capacity, please do it, because it can help them. Because I did have people that served in that capacity for me, and that really helped sustain me. That's why I didn't get swept away, because the physical presence of my mother wasn't with me anymore. So, all right, and then the last part of this segment that of this episode that we want to talk about is sort of that estranged dynamic, right? That where, okay, kind of piggybacking on the first part where you had the presence of your mother and it wasn't that great, and maybe you had to become an adult and make some decisions about, continuing to engage with that individual, or, setting boundaries to be like, nah, I'm not going to do it. Again, this is a subject matter that we ourselves don't have a lot to contribute. So we don't want people to be like, oh, they talking about stuff that they don't know nothing about. But we do just want to make mention that for those that have to make that decision, that had to make that decision, like, look, although you gave birth to me, I can't allow you to kind of cross over into my space. We just really want to encourage you, because and we also want to open up a question. If you feel led to respond, we'll put the question in on YouTube. We'll put that in the description, and in the podcast applications. If you guys want to email us, and email us your answers to the questions, we would absolutely welcome it. But what that presence of the absence of that mother that you might have had issues with, how that has impacted your life. Like when you made the decision to say, you know what, now that I'm at the age where I can set boundaries for myself, I'm setting a boundary, and you don't get to cross that boundary anymore. How has that helped your life? How has that helped you to move on from maybe some challenges and some painful situations you experienced when you didn't have the control that you have over your life now?
I think it goes both ways, or it can
Mm-hmm.
go both ways. So, say if you had a toxic relationship with your mother,
Mm-hmm.
it teach you early on that you had to set boundaries just so you can have your peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if it's a friend, a family member, or your parents. They still can be a toxic person to you,
Mm-hmm.
and the way they move about in their life and how they conduct themselves. So you really have to protect your peace at all costs. So regardless of who it is, your mother, father, whoever, if that person is not any good to you from a peace of mind standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, you have to set boundaries, and it probably teaches you how to do that early, and how to move about in life, how to set boundaries with everybody you come in contact with.
Yes, that's true. That is true. That is true. So that's going to be tonight's episode, you guys. So we appreciate y'all for hanging in there with us. Thank you so much for supporting us. We are working on ideas and other things we can come up with for It Takes Work. Now I know we said that we were going to do like a three episode series in this family dynamic series, but I think we're going to cut it here, because the next episode that we're going to talk about, and then we're playing with ideas, so that might change. So I don't want y'all to come back and be like, you said in episode 5 the child was going to talk about this, but I'm going to have a conversation with my partner over here, and we're gonna see if this will be the next episode. But I'm thinking about really tackling intimacy, right? And I mean, and I'm not talking, I know where the mind goes when you say intimacy. Oh, she talk about the good old adult stuff to get into. No, I'm talking about intimacy, engagement, like really getting to know you, getting to know all about you, intimacy. So I'm thinking that might be our next episode. But of course I gotta get the sign off, because this ain't just me by myself. Huh? But I do appreciate y'all for tuning in on YouTube. For those of y'all listening on the podcast platforms, thank you so much. Thank you so much for subscribing to It Takes Work. And please share the video if you're watching it with a friend. Share the podcast with a friend. Content ideas and topics, please, 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 we welcome them. Email us at ittakeswork.itw@gmail.com if you have any questions or even comments. We take words of encouragement, because hey, we're human. And we just want to wish you guys a great evening, and we'll be back with episode 6 in August. Y'all take care. See y'all later.